Today I want to give you a story of Smokey. Smokey, we believe, was originally dumped on the AHS Popcorn Park property, where he lived, unfortunately, for a few years. Reason being is there was someone who lived there, resident who lives there, and they had gotten very accustomed to Smokey walking around and them seeing him and putting down cat food for him. So they would see him when they went out to smoke their cigarettes, and when they hung out outside at night, they'd see Smokey. So because they got so attached to this little connection that they had with him, they were willing to keep him at risk and keep him outside where predators were very, very much a thing. Out of the popcorn zoo, chickens and ducks and all sorts of wildlife will get picked off by predators at times. And a cat on the property is definitely not safe. And through much negotiation, every time I would bring up bringing him inside, getting him into the shelter, I had 15, 20 years. Probably at the time, just shy of 20 years of cat experience of taming all of these different cats that people said that I couldn't, or people said were too aggressive, too wild. And Smokey, he would walk around outside and he'd mush the peacocks. I've never seen anything like that. And everybody would take notice of that and how cute it was and how precious and everything. And then they'd go inside the building and leave him outside. When the winters were cold and the snow would fall, Smokey stayed outside. When the heat was so hot that people would rush back in the building and mandates would be put where dogs can only be walked for short periods of time, Smokey remained outside. When the winds would whip and the rain would come sideways and the tropical type storms that we would get outside, and we would be bringing things in because the windstorm would be throwing things around that were 15 pounds and under. Well, this 15 pounds and under cat remained outside. And it took a long time because every time it was brought up, it would get shot down, and this person would be talked to by John. And because John didn't want to ruffle any feathers, he allowed them to have their way, and he would tell us to just leave him alone. Don't worry about the cat. We're not trapping the cat. We're not doing it. And it had become discouraging at that point because this just was a dead end. Every time it was brought up, it was a complete dead end. We weren't able to get this cat inside, not because we weren't able to, we weren't allowed to. So at some point, a co-worker there had started up the movement again because they saw that Smokey had lost some weight and possibly had an injury. As you will see, absolutely had an injury. From the best of my, theory, and a lot of people look at the wounds and think the same thing, is that a large bird, whether it be a hawk, an eagle, something along those lines, tried to grab Smokey and carry him off. And you can see where the talons sunk in, and there was one down the bottom. So he had holes and then one down here as if something grabbed him. Smokey was a little bit of a bigger guy, so he was lucky enough to have a little extra weight on him, so he wasn't able to be carried away. And he must have ran to safety before a second dive happened, because at that point he had a major injury, and he very well could have just gotten eaten. So because this injury happened, when this coworker brought up needing to trap him to treat what went on, suddenly it got some movement. And because of her, we were able to start this movement to get him, to actually finally be allowed to trap him. And with her help, we did. Together, we caught this cat, and that's when it became my world. That's when Smokey got to be an indoor cat, because there was no way Smokey was going back outside. I had waited for years for this opportunity, and the thought of him being safe, finally, after years of walking in and seeing him in the worst weather conditions possible, or just seeing him on a nice day and thinking this could be the day that something grabs him. And, you know, there was a lot of doubt. There was a lot of, oh, well, if he doesn't come around, if he doesn't. And I kept telling him, there's no if. I don't know who you're talking to, because I know what I'm doing. And I'm telling you, this cat is going to be domesticated. There's no maybes, there's no ifs, there's no... And the person who kept him outside all that time continued to fight to try to get him back outside on the other end of this quarantine. Because he had these wounds in a shelter, they consider that a bite wound or a wound of unknown origin. So you have to quarantine that animal for, used to be a 6-month quarantine. It's a rabies quarantine. So if something were to be bitten by rabies within that 6 months period, you would see enough of a sign or symptom that you can address. And, you know, waiting that 6 months, you know, that's the window that you, by law, need to, you know, carry out. That had gotten changed to 4 months. So 4-month quarantine, but Dr. Barris would make them wait another 2 months, because they had to have a feline AIDS leukemia test and then another one in 6 months for her to verify that they're negative. She gave the option for someone to take them home within that 2-month window between 4 and 6 months, with the risk that if they did come up positive after that 2 months, it's just your cat now. So that obviously limits cats from going home with other cats. That limits cats from going home with anybody with like a little bit of a doubt. Like, what if there's feline AIDS? What if there's leukemia? So it pretty much kept it out of 6-month quarantine. Very, very few, maybe 2 cats over the time that it was a 4-month quarantine. And that was years. Maybe 2 cats. I can't even remember one, honestly, had gone home between that 4 and 6 months. So again, basically 6 months. So I knew I had 6 months of work, and this quarantine happened completely within the male cat yard. Keep that in mind for a future video, because that's going to come up again. The entire quarantine, under the guidance of Dr. Barris, happened in the male cat yard. You know, so when Ace's video comes up, keep that in mind. Maybe we'll do that next week. Because a lot of just nonsense games were played, and power moves, and just people, you know, that just got offended ego-wise, and everything becomes more difficult when those things happen. And this is why it's so hard within the shelter system to do the best for the animals, because so many of the people on the inside, whether it be the higher ups or coworkers, make things so much harder for you to do. They fight against the actual cause. And it's difficult, because it takes you swimming against the current as hard as you can at all times to make a difference. And it shouldn't be that difficult, because we're supposed to be doing it for the same reasons. So back to Smokey. So we're able to trap him, get him in, and I knew that from there on, he would be inside. During this process, the person that had kept him outside, she would get drunk at night, and she would leave voice messages on other employees' cell phones, or text them frantically. Tell Jay that we'll take Smokey back outside. Tell Jay that if it... And, I took it all as disrespect, because I had done this for too long not to have faith in me. And it's okay though, because like I said, in the end, as long as Smokey won, I won. And I didn't really care about who liked it or who didn't. And we won again. Smokey endured everything he endured. He shouldn't have had to suffer those wounds. But despite suffering those wounds, in the end, we still won. Because you can do this. You can do this, and people who tell you that you can't do this are lying to you. Because the easier route is just that. It's easier. It's easier to write them off. It's easier to just consider them not your problem. The more cats that become not somebody's problem within the sheltering system allows them this little bubble to make themselves look like shining heroes. When they take on the amount of cats they take on and then see them through to the end, that's the harder part. That's the part where, like I just said, you're hustling, you're fighting so hard because not everyone's on the same page. And you're doing that just to get the right outcome. So the entire system and organization, as far as they're concerned, for sure, is set up to just work against your cause. Too many people don't have the right ideas. And, you know, this is another one of these examples. It took me, it took another employee continuing to speak up for him, and then it took my efforts through those months to work with Smokey to make sure that Smokey would never see that fate again. While people who claim to care for him continued to push for him to be in the same situation that got him injured. And you have to talk to these people as if it even makes sense. You care, you want them safe, and they claim to care as well, and they want to put them where it's been proven that it wasn't safe. This is the fight. This is the odds we're up against, unfortunately. And again, time and time again, we won. And this is what can be done with dedication and just not giving up on cats. We can do this. We can domesticate just about any cat on the planet with the proper amount of time, patience, and people who are dedicated enough to see it through to the end. Smokey's another example. Good boy, Smokey. You're a good boy. As you can see, Smokey's making tremendous progress. He still has some months left on his quarantine, but I can assure you that this cat will never live outside again. He's making excellent progress. He's a very sweet cat. He's shown a lot of affection. He's really settling into a very safe, comfortable life. And this is exactly where I wanted him to be in his quest to find a nice, safe indoor home. He deserves that. He's been attacked physically. He doesn't have to endure anything like that again. This is what's important for his life, and I'm gonna do everything I can to keep fighting for that wonderful future that we know that Smokey can definitely achieve. He's gotten to be just so sweet and trusting, and he's gonna make even more progress as weeks and months pass. So, big congratulations to Smokey on making all the progress that he's made. Hey, Smokey. You're doing so good, buddy. That's a good boy. You're a good boy, Smokey. Look at that boy. That fur on your head. There we go. Doing excellent, bud. No more outside for you, Smokey. You're a house cat. You're gonna be a big, happy house cat. Hi, Smokey. You're a good boy. You're such a good boy.